The self is not something you discover. It is something you build. If you wait to find who you are, you will wait your entire life. Identity appears only where choice becomes action, and repetition becomes character. In this episode, Iqbal dismantles the illusion that identity is hidden inside us, waiting to be found. Khudi is created, not revealed. It takes shape through discipline, through repetition, through fidelity to effort over time. What you repeatedly choose is what you become. Today, we continue our journey through Allama Iqbal, The Secret of the Self, by Allama Iqbal. This is episode 20. Pause for a moment and reflect on who you are becoming through what you repeat every day. The self is not discovered. It is created. Nothing finished arrives at birth. Only direction does. What the self becomes is shaped slowly by what it chooses to repeat, to resist, and to affirm. The idea that identity is found misleads many. Looking inward without acting outward returns only fragments. Identity does not reveal itself in silence alone. It takes form in movement. The self is sculpted by decision. Every decision leaves residue. Residue accumulates. Accumulation becomes character. Character becomes destiny. Without ever announcing itself. The self does not wait for clarity. Before acting, clarity emerges. Through action. Action tests intention. Intention refined by action becomes will. Self-creation demands responsibility. What already exists cannot be blamed forever. Inheritance explains beginnings. It does not excuse endings. Ending patterns belongs to the self alone. The self that says, "This is just how I am," has surrendered authorship. Nature offers material. The self decides structure. Creating the self means refusing to be accidental. Accident does not build coherence. Deliberate effort does. Deliberateness organizes energy toward becoming. The self becomes real when it chooses constraint. Unconstrained possibility diffuses. Chosen limits focus power. Power without focus evaporates unused. Self-creation is slow. Speed feels productive, but often bypasses depth. Depth arrives only when effort remains long enough to shape structure. The self is created not by heroic moments, but by ordinary fidelity. Fidelity to effort. Fidelity to values. Fidelity to decision. Fidelity compounds invisibly. The self must stop waiting for permission to grow. Permission delays authorship. Authorship activates responsibility. Responsibility animates existence. Self-creation requires resisting imitation. Imitation feels safe. Safety discourages originality. Originality demands risk. Risk trains courage. Courage fuels identity. The self that imitates never becomes distinct. Distinct cells influence history. Blurred cells disappear into it. The self creates itself by choosing meaning over reaction. Reaction follows environment. Meaning reorganizes environment. Organization signals authorship. Every habit is a creative act. Every routine is a quiet declaration of what matters. Structure reveals priority. Priority reveals selfhood. The self does not need perfection. It needs continuity. Interrupted effort collapses form. Sustained effort creates shape. Self-creation can feel lonely. Creation always does. What is not yet shared must first be developed independently. Independence produces originality. Originality attracts resonance later. The self that avoids solitude cannot create itself. It only reflects. Reflection delays authorship. Creation demands inner silence and outward action. The self creates itself by choosing difficulty intentionally. Easy paths preserve what exists. Difficult paths reveal capacity. Capacity expanded becomes new identity. Self-creation means editing the self. Not everything inherited must be preserved. Discarding is creative courage. Retention without evaluation stagnates growth. The self begins to notice that certain thoughts are habits. Habits of doubt. Habits of avoidance. Replacing them requires practice. Practice constructs new identity. Self-creation involves repetition of truth. Truth stated once inspires. Truth lived repeatedly transforms. Transformation stabilizes identity. The self learns that waiting for motivation delays becoming. Becoming motivates action. Action precedes feeling. Feeling follows direction. The self that commits to self-creation accepts imperfection willingly. Perfection immobilizes. Progress constructs. Construction replaces anxiety with momentum. The self becomes something by doing something. Thought alone cannot substitute movement. Movement anchors intention into reality. Self-creation transforms time. Time stops flowing aimlessly. It becomes material. Material sculpted daily turns life into work of art. The self that creates itself does not seek completion. Completion is illusion. Becoming is perpetual. Perpetual becoming sustains vitality. Self-creation demands courage to abandon familiarity. Familiar patterns feel safe. Safe patterns hold growth. Growth lives beyond familiarity. The self must recognize that discomfort accompanies creation. Creation reshapes structure. Restructuring unsettles identity. Unsettling awakens potential. The self accepts instability temporarily, to gain coherence permanently. Temporary confusion precedes integrated form. Every day is a workshop. Every choice a stroke. Every effort a correction. Identity emerges, not from intention, but from execution repeated. The self is not a passenger. It is a maker. Passengers endure. Makers shape. Khudi belongs to makers. Self-creation requires patience with uncertainty. The self will not know in advance what form it will finally take. Clarity unfolds during construction, not before it. Those who demand certainty before acting remain unfinished. The self must learn to tolerate being undefined. Undefined does not mean empty. It means flexible. Flexibility allows form. Rigid certainty prevents growth. Every day, the self is rewriting itself. Not through grand declarations, but through quiet alignment. Alignment repeated becomes structure. Structure stabilizes identity. Self-creation is a series of small obediences. Obedience to conscience. Obedience to effort. Obedience to truth. These obediences are not slavery. They are self-authored discipline. Discipline liberates power. The self that avoids discipline forgets that chaos disciplines instead. Chaos is harsher. Chaos wastes energy. Chosen order preserves it. Self-creation demands the courage to fail repeatedly without collapsing identity. Failure informs design. Design improves execution. Execution strengthens competence. Competence breeds confidence. The self must separate self-worth from outcome. Outcome fluctuates. Effort defines becoming. Effort consistently honored creates stability regardless of result. Self-creation requires honest inventory. Which patterns weaken me? Which habits sharpen me? Such questions are uncomfortable. Comfort delays truth. Truth enables growth. The self becomes limited when it refuses responsibility for its own patterns. Liberation begins when responsibility is reclaimed. Reclaimed responsibility returns authorship. Self-creation includes pruning, removing excess obligations, discarding roles that no longer serve direction. Pruning feels like loss. Loss creates space. Space enables form. The self learns that not all opportunities are worth pursuing. Choice is creative restraint. Restraint refines power. Refined power lasts. Self-creation does not tolerate contradiction for long. Values and behavior must align. Misalignment leaks energy. Alignment restores integrity. Integrity strengthens presence. The self must practice deliberate repetition. What is repeated without thought programs the self passively. What is repeated with intention constructs the self actively. Life does not wait until the self is ready. Readiness is forged through engagement. Engagement trains readiness. Readiness improves engagement. The cycle builds. Self-creation also requires forgiveness. Forgiveness for missteps. Forgiveness for slow progress. Pressure without compassion cracks structure. Firmness with compassion strengthens it. The self must accept that creation includes setbacks. Setbacks are revisions. Revisions refine design. Refinement increases durability. The self begins to sense that time responds to intention. Days shape deliberately. Feel longer. Meaning condenses time. Drift dissolves it. Self-creation replaces regret with responsibility. Regret looks backward. Responsibility faces forward. Forward motion restores agency. The self that creates itself becomes less reactive. Reaction is a sign of external authorship. Creation requires intention. Intention resists reaction. The self must guard attention carefully. Attention fragmented cannot sustain creation. Fragmentation weakens form. Focus consolidates it. Self-creation transforms identity from story into system. Stories inspire. Systems endure. Endurance sustains becoming. The self learns that becoming is not dramatic. It is cumulative. Cumulative force outlasts inspiration. Consistency writes destiny. Self-creation must survive boredom. Boredom tempts abandonment. Abandonment resets growth. Endurance passes boredom and uncovers depth. The self must trust that effort unseen still constructs foundation. Foundations are invisible until weight arrives. Self-creation demands humility. Humility accepts learning. Learning improves design. Arrogance resists correction. Correction sustains evolution. The self does not need to become exceptional. It must become authentic. Authenticity organizes strength. Exceptional moments emerge naturally. Self-creation brings a subtle joy, not excitement. Confidence. Confidence rooted in agency. Agency confirms existence. The self that creates itself no longer feels accidental. Life begins to feel deliberate. Deliberateness restores meaning. Meaning stabilizes endurance. Self-creation aligns past and future. The past becomes material. The future becomes direction. The present becomes workshop. Workshop living fulfills the self. The self that creates itself. Accepts isolation temporarily. Isolation disciplines vision. Vision refines direction. Direction attracts alignment later. Self-creation does not avoid comparison. It simply ignores it. Comparison diffuses focus. Focus deepens form. The self becomes what it repeatedly commits to being. Commitment organizes life. Organized life sustains purpose. There is no final self. There is only the practice of becoming. Practice endured. Is the identity. Identity evolving. Is Khudi in motion? There comes a moment when the self recognizes that no one else can complete it. Guidance may appear. Inspiration may arrive. Support may assist. But creation itself cannot be outsourced. The self understands that becoming is an obligation, not a luxury. An obligation to potential. Potential neglected decays into regret. Potential acted upon condenses into purpose. The self no longer waits for circumstances to change. Change follows action. Action follows decision. Decision belongs to the self alone. The self that creates itself does not accuse the past. The past becomes raw material. Raw material shaped intentionally becomes foundation. Foundation supports the future. Self-creation replaces fantasy with construction. Fantasy imagines. Construction manifests. Manifestation stabilizes belief. Belief embodied becomes certainty. The self learns that identity is maintained only through upkeep. Neglected structures decay. Maintained structures strengthen. Selfhood requires maintenance. Like anything that lasts, the self no longer asks what it should become. It asks how it will build today. Daily construction prevents existential drift. Self-creation develops weight. Weight grants seriousness. Seriousness focuses effort. Focused effort produces coherence. Coherence anchors presence. The self experiences a quiet authority emerging, not granted by position, not announced by others. Authority earned through consistency. Consistency creates credibility. The self becomes trusted by itself. Broken promises fade. Kept commitments accumulate. Trust in oneself becomes internal stability. The self that trusts itself does not panic under uncertainty. Uncertainty invites creativity. Creativity fills gaps. Self-creation demands the courage to let go of imagined selves. Imagined identities obstruct real growth. Releasing fantasy. Frees energy for reality. The self stops postponing life. Life is not rehearsal. Creation happens now. Or not at all. Later is illusion. Now is workshop. The self realizes that character is not felt. It is demonstrated. Demonstration requires action. Action accrues identity. Identity stabilizes destiny. Self-creation foregrounds integrity. Integrity prevents fragmentation. Fragmentation exhausts. Integrated living conserves energy. The self begins to feel aligned across time. Yesterday informs today, today builds tomorrow. Continuity emerges. Continuity feels whole. The self that creates itself no longer feels scattered. Scattered attention reassembles into direction. Direction clarifies choice. Choice strengthens authorship. Self-creation does not require isolation forever. It requires independence first. Independent selves collaborate freely, dependent selves merge incoherently. The self becomes aware that abundance emerges from structure. Chaos wastes opportunity. Structure channels creative force. Creative force expands life. The self experiences less anxiety about worth. Worth expressed through effort endures. Effort validates existence. Existence feels grounded. Self-creation confirms agency. Agency dissolves helplessness. Helplessness silences initiative. Initiative animates life. The self learns that the self is never found. It is affirmed repeatedly. Affirmation occurs through action. Action testifies truth. Self-creation gradually silences the question of meaninglessness. Meaning arises from participation. Passive observers feel meaningless. Active makers do not. The self senses responsibility as privilege. Privilege acknowledges power. Power disciplined becomes ethical influence. The self carries itself with measured confidence, not arrogance, not doubt. Centered firmness. Firmness drawn from repeated effort. The self no longer envies others' outcomes. Outcomes are irrelevant. Process defines identity. Identity absorbs outcome gracefully. Self-creation allows the self to remain human. Mistakes do not erase effort. Effort repairs mistakes. Continuous repair deepens structure. The self finally accepts that becoming is endless. There will be no arrival. But endless becoming is not exhaustion. It is vitality sustained. Vitality means life participated in. Participation dignifies existence. Existence shaped intentionally fulfills Khudi. The self that creates itself does not fear mortality. What was created continues beyond duration. Creation leaves imprint. Imprint transcends time. The self stands. Not completed, but coherent. Not perfect, but authentic. Not static, but becoming. This is the dignity of a created self. This is the fulfillment of Khudi.